Did you know what happened on the day when the fate of a critical Russian energy hub was sealed? At 200 hours on September 5th, 2025, a Russian engineer, diligently monitoring pressure gauges at the Ryazan refinery, remained oblivious to the months of meticulous planning by Ukrainian forces aimed at his plant's destruction. In a mere 73 seconds, that $7 billion jackpot was destined to become the brightest beacon in the Russian night sky. And that staggering $7 billion figure is no overstatement, because this facility was more than just a refinery. It served as the primary fueling station for the entire Moscow military district, providing the fuel for tanks threatening Europe, powering the capital, and funneling billions in hard currency directly into the Kremlin's war coffers. For Ukraine, taking this vital facility offline transcended mere symbolic victory. It represented a direct chokehold on Russia's capacity to wage war, establishing it as a target of almost unimaginable strategic importance. The linchpin of this audacious attack was a Sokol 300, a 440-pound mothership drone that had been screaming towards Ryazan at 150 miles per hour, hugging the terrain at a perilously low 130 feet. Strapped to its airframe were 10 custom-built FPV attack drones, each armed with a formidable 4.4-pound shaped charge warhead. The operation was a masterclass in exploiting Russia's over-reliance on heavy defenses to counter small, agile threats. The math behind this operation should be giving Russian generals sleepless nights. The Sokol 300 drone costs approximately $100,000. The 10 FPV drones it carried cost $5,000 each. The ultimate target, the ELU AVT-6 cracking unit, a single piece of infrastructure valued at $500 million within a refinery worth a staggering $7 billion. Ukrainian intelligence had painstakingly spent months identifying this single point of failure. This wasn't merely warfare. It was the most brutal corporate takeover in history, and the stock was about to plummet. But that was only the beginning. At 00:15 hours, long before the target was even within sight, the Sokol 300 had lifted off from a concealed field in Sumy Oblast. For the next 90 minutes, its flight became a masterful demonstration of exploiting the laws of physics. Hugging the terrain at 130 feet, it ingeniously utilized the very curvature of the Earth as its primary shield against Russia's expensive Nebo-M and Big Bird radars. This was no pre-programmed straight line. It was a winding, treacherous path meticulously charted by 3 months of relentless intelligence gathering. U.S. satellite data provided the static map, but Ukrainian Leleka 100 scout drones provided the real-time traffic report, painting a precise, invisible highway through the numerous gaps in Russian air defense. This entire operation was born from 4 weeks of meticulous planning that pinpointed the refinery's Achilles heel. The choice of the Sokol mothership wasn't for show. It was a cold, hard calculation of risk versus reward. Instead of launching dozens of long-range drones that could be picked off one by one, they chose to send one larger, stealthier aircraft to deliver the knockout punch up close. It's akin to the difference between an archer firing a volley of arrows from a mile away and a hunter who quietly approaches and places the knife exactly where it needs to go. And then something incredible happened. One of those FPVs was uniquely different. Instead of a warhead, it carried a compact, custom-built jamming pod. Its sole mission was to create a 10-second window of pure electronic chaos designed to blind the S-400's primary radar at the most critical moment. It was the electronic equivalent of throwing sand in the goalie's eyes just before taking a penalty kick. No one could have guessed what would happen next. At 01:58 hours, just 12 miles from the refinery, the Sokol executed its ultimate purpose. It released its 10-drone payload and banked hard for home. That 12-mile mark was no arbitrary guess. It was a carefully calculated kill zone. It lay just outside the maximum effective engagement range of the Pantsir-S1 air defense systems protecting the facility. Now, the Russians hadn't guarded their $7 billion asset with a mere chain-link fence and a sleepy security guard. This was a billion-dollar fortress, constructed with the kind of arrogant overconfidence that only petrodollars can buy. The outer wall consisted of the S-400 Triumph system, whose Big Bird and Nebo-M radars are engineered to track strategic bombers and ballistic missiles 250 miles away. It's like purchasing a professional telescope to search for alien invasions while completely disregarding the termites devouring the foundations of your own house. Then, there was the electronic moat, the Krasuka 4. This wasn't a subtle jammer. It was a $200 million brute that blanketed 150 miles in every direction with such an immense volume of raw radio frequency noise that it could induce a satellite migraine. If anything, somehow managed to penetrate that electronic hurricane. 12 Pantsir-S1 complexes formed the inner wall. Each one was a $15 million self-contained death machine bristling with missiles and 30mm cannons designed to shred anything that dared to approach too closely. Add 2 Mi-28 Havoc attack helicopters on permanent standby, and Spetsnaz patrols so bored they were probably playing cards, and you had the most expensive security system oil money could procure. Inside a climate-controlled command vehicle, an operator named Sergei hadn't spilled his tea in a year. On his screen, the airspace appeared impeccably clean. He had been meticulously trained to believe that absolutely nothing could touch this facility. He'd seen reports of Ukrainian drone strikes on the front lines, and scoffed. "Children's toys," he would tell his colleague. He had no idea that 10 of those very toys were now deep inside his kill zone, and they were about to impart a harsh lesson. In modern warfare, it's not the cost of your weapon that truly matters, but the intelligence of the person wielding it. What happened in the next 24 hours changed the course of history. At 01:59, 2 of the 10 FPV drones broke from the pack and punched their throttles, climbing aggressively. Their mission wasn't to hit anything. It was to get painted by Russian radar. On the S-400's gravestone display, 2 bright blips materialized out of the ground clutter. The system performed precisely what its $500 million price tag promised. It acquired, tracked, and locked on with ruthless efficiency. That was the trigger. As the S-400 focused its powerful radar on the 2 decoys, the designated jammer drone, one of the 8 still flying low, unleashed a focused 10-second blast of high-powered microwave energy aimed directly at the gravestone's receiver. It was the electronic equivalent of someone pointing a high-beam flashlight directly into your eyes when you're fumbling for your keys in the dark. You're not completely blind, but you certainly can't discern anything that matters. In that precisely engineered window of chaos, the 7 remaining attack drones slipped through the gap, completely undetected. The Krasuka 4 had rendered GPS utterly useless, but these drones didn't need it. They were navigating using solid-state gyros and accelerometers that meticulously tracked every change in velocity and direction. It was a sophisticated attack that would disrupt most consumer drones, but these were no hobby shop gadgets. You can jam GPS, but you cannot fool inertial navigation. The electronic chess match was over. Ukraine had just checkmated a $1 billion defense with a 10-second bluff. No one expected this. At 0200 hours, the first FPV made its impact. Its target wasn't the ELU AVT-6. Not yet. It was a secondary pipe rack. The 4.5-pound shaped charge detonated its copper liner, forming a high-velocity jet traveling at 25,000 feet per second. It didn't merely explode. It vaporized a precisely engineered hole through just over half an inch of steel at over 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, instantly igniting the fuel inside. But this initial success created an immediate problem. A towering column of thick black unburnt hydrocarbons billowed into the sky, completely blinding the optical cameras of the drones following it. The explosion was the jarring slap in the face the Russians desperately needed. Suddenly, the entire electronic landscape shifted dramatically. The Krasuka 4 surged to life, pumping out enough raw RF energy to disrupt every civilian cell phone from here to the next oblast. 2 Mi-28 Havoc gunships cooled up their pilots, receiving orders to hunt for any electromagnetic signatures they could detect. The Russian Ministry of Defense would later claim 92 drones were shot down across the country, 8 of them right here at Ryazan. But the reality on the ground was far more chaotic. The Russian operators intensified their electronic assault, moving beyond simple GPS jamming to sophisticated GPS spoofing, sending false satellite signals designed to trick the Ukrainian drones into believing they were somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. It was a sophisticated attack that would disrupt most commercial systems, but these were not toy drones. Inside each custom FPV, precision solid-state gyros detected the discrepancy between the false GPS data and its actual physical movement. The inertial measurement units didn't rely on satellites. They tracked every change in velocity and direction using the fundamental laws of physics. You can spoof a satellite, but you cannot lie to Newton's laws of motion. Just then, shrapnel from a near miss by a Pantsir missile shredded the propellers of the third drone. It began to tumble, crippled, but not utterly destroyed. The operator, watching through his crystal-clear FPV feed, made a split-second decision that was equal parts brilliant and insane. Instead of allowing the drone to crash uselessly, he guided its burning wreckage directly into a pool of spilled fuel from the first explosion, effectively using the drone itself as an incendiary device to complete the job. A river of fire now began to snake its way toward the refinery's core, a self-inflicted wound that Russia never anticipated. The chess match was truly over. This had devolved into nothing short of a knife fight in a burning room. While the 10 custom FPVs began their suicidal dive into the heart of the Russian defense network, the Sokol 300 mothership that had carried them was already banking hard for home. Its mission was complete. Now, its only remaining task was to disappear without a trace. 80 miles away, it would execute its final command, a pre-programmed dive into a dense, unpopulated forest, ensuring its advanced technology would never be recovered by the enemy. But for its children, the real fight had just begun. The Russian defense, though initially deceived, was not entirely useless. It was simply slow to react. The 10-second jamming window closed, and the S-400 operator, his screen clear once more, fired upon the 2 decoy drones. 2 57 E-6 missiles screamed into the night, and the first 2 Ukrainian drones disintegrated. On the Russian command net, it was a moment of fleeting relief. 2 kills. The operator reported, believing the threat was over. He was gravely mistaken. The 7 attack drones were now deep inside the perimeter, and the 12 Pantsir-S1 units suddenly awoke. Their operators, in a state of pure panic, switched to manual engagement and began filling the sky with an impenetrable wall of steel. It was like attempting to hit a hummingbird with a fire hose. Inefficient, but if you spray enough water, you're eventually going to get it wet. A proximity fuse detonated near the 3rd drone, shredding it with tungsten fragments. A burst of cannon fire from a different Pantsir caught the 4th. The 5th, battling the treacherous thermal updrafts from the initial fire, lost control and slammed into the ground. An Mi-28 Havoc gunship, its optics finally cutting through the dense smoke, spotted and obliterated the 6th drone. The jammer drone, its mission complete, was caught and destroyed. A 7th attacker was taken out by another Pantsir missile. 10 drones had entered. 8 were now twisted, burning scraps scattered across the Ryazan countryside. The Russian defense had indeed cost Ukraine dearly, but the cost for Russia was about to become infinitely higher, because 2 got through. Through the hellscape of fire, smoke, and shrapnel, 2 FPV drones emerged like vengeful spirits. Their operators had masterfully used the chaos, the very destruction of their comrades, as a shield. The Pantsirs, having expended their ready-to-fire missiles in a panicked volley, were now in the midst of their agonizing reload cycles. There was a deadly 15-second lull in the defensive fire. On the screens of the 2 remaining Ukrainian operators, the prize lay within. The massive ELU AVT-6 cracking unit and its adjacent crude oil storage tank. There were no more decoys, no more tricks, just 2 drones, 2 operators, and a $7 billion target awaiting its final judgment. What happened in the next seconds would etch itself into history. The Ukrainian operators didn't have to choose. They had 2 drones. 2 final commands were sent. Both FPVs pushed their throttles to the maximum and began their terminal dives. At 0203 hours, the first FPV impacted the ELU AVT-6. The 4.5-pound shaped charge didn't merely explode, it performed physics-based surgery. Its copper liner inverted and stretched into a molten jet, moving at 25,000 feet per second, punching clean through the unit's thick steel housing and injecting over 5,000-degree Fahrenheit plasma directly into the intricate network of pipes and pressure vessels. It was like firing a bolt of lightning into a city's power grid. The system didn't just break, it cooked itself from the inside out. Exactly 1.3 seconds later, the second drone struck the storage tank. This explosion was distinctly different. The shaped charge punctured the formidable steel wall. But the true weapon was the tens of thousands of tons of crude oil contained within. The fuel ignited instantly from the immense heat and pressure, shattering the tank's 20-millimeter steel walls like fragile glass. It was akin to shaking a can of soda for 5 minutes and then shooting it with a rifle. The result was a colossal fireball that NASA satellites would register from orbit. The strategic fallout was immediate and catastrophic for Russia. The destruction of the ELU AVT-6 and the subsequent uncontrollable fires crippled 50% of the Ryazan refinery's output. This single, devastating strike contributed to a 17% drop in Russia's entire national refining capacity. Within weeks, Russia, a supposed energy superpower, was humiliatingly forced to import gasoline from Belarus, while prices at their own pumps spiked by 54%. The two drones that successfully got through, a combined investment of perhaps $10,000, inflicted billions in direct and indirect damages. Not even the best Wall Street hedge fund could possibly yield a return on investment like that. Moscow's response was predictably brutish and unimaginative. They deployed 5 more Pantsir-S1 systems and another pair of Mi-28 helicopters to Ryazan. They reinforced the very systems that had just spectacularly failed. It's like installing a taller fence to keep out birds after your house was just destroyed by a devastating flood. In the end, Ukraine proved a fundamental lesson of modern warfare that their ancestors understood profoundly. It's not about how large or powerful your club is. It's about knowing precisely where to strike. You don't necessarily need a billion-dollar hammer to win. Sometimes, all you truly need is a very smart, very cheap, and very sharp nail. What does this pivotal event tell us about the future of asymmetric warfare?